Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today in our Creating Miniature Armies series, we're going to talk about the French. Medieval French, 1328-1444. The presentation covers French armies from the reign of Philip IV, first Valois king, up to the ordinance issued by Charles VII in 1445. The period is marked by the conflict with the English kings, known as the 100 Years' War, and a spectacular list of defeats, the sole exception being the last quarter of the 14th century, when the Constable of France, Bertrand de Cousseline, was the only one to understand that the English could not be defeated on the battlefield, and another approach was required. Basically, de Cousseline adopted guerrilla warfare and took back almost all the land the Black Prince and King Edward managed to conquer back for the French. The core army was the nobility that fought mounted, and later, after the disaster at Crécy, started to dismount in a mostly unsuccessful attempt to resist the English arrow barrage. Only later, with the development of artillery and the ordnance of Charles VII, they modernized their armies, would the French be successful on the battlefield. So let's talk now about the army composition. This is based on sword point, and now there is a supplement coming out in next year that I'm very happy to say that I'm part of the playtesting team and reviewing team that has a lot more detail on the 100 Years' War, a lot more options, but let's do but it's based on the previous army list. So we have up to 6 commanders. Nobles are retainers, for sure 100%. You can have an army only by nobles and retainers. Commoners up to 50%. Artillery gun, it's 1 every 333 points. This is a sword point rule, but artillery guns you can have, I can imagine, depending on the battlefield, 3 or 4, and depending on the era. Allies up to 50%. This would be most probably be Scottish during the latter part of the 100 Years' War, from 1415, 1420 onwards, and mercenaries up to 50%. Now, let's talk about deployment. Now, the French deployed with a strategy that never succeeded because they always managed to not follow the rules, not follow the plan, and because of their impetuous nobility. So as you can see here, they usually sometimes actually deploy. The English always deployed in defensive position, longbowmen on the flank supporting the men-at-arms in the center, in difficult terrain, stakes, etc. The French had 2 options. Now, they deployed with a crossbowman ahead, the Genoese crossbowman, and the plan was the Genoese crossbowman would use the pavises, go close to the English, and disorganize and create problems to the English longbowmen, and then the mounted knights would charge and would be unaffected, as the longbowman would have been nullified by the crossbowman. This was not successful, of course, and another type of deployment for the English and this for the French, and this they used in Agincourt and also in Poitiers, who had a dismounted army. The men-at-arms were dismounted, and in the flanks they had a small contingent of crossbowmen, of Genoese crossbowmen or French crossbowmen, and a small, of course, contingent of mounted knights. These flank attacks had as the plan was to attack the longbowmen, destroy them, and then the foot knights would attack unhindered the men-at-arms. All these were unsuccessful due to sometimes the great impetuosity of the French army, but also the longbowmen were very well protected. Now let's go to basing. My basing is the same as I had in the English Creating Miniature Armies. So I had 50 by 50 base, where I put 5 miniatures when it's heavy infantry, and 4 miniatures where it's like light infantry, like medium infantry, like crossbowmen. And 40 by 40 bases recently for my Poitiers project, again, 4 minis on the 40 by 40 base representing heavy infantry and knights, and 3 representing crossbowmen. I have to say I prefer the 40 by 40 now, although 50 by 50 is, as you can see here, a very nice large base that you can create beautiful diorama. I don't know how convenient it is to play other rules. 40 by 40 base It's quite flexible, and you can play also many rule sets. Many do it 40 by 60. I like 40 by 40 because I like my bases square. For the mounted, I use 50 by 50. This is a base that is required by Sword Point. It's perfect for two mounted miniatures, and it looks good as you can see. But I'm sure that other people would prefer different basing so they can use for the rules. As I'm playing mostly solo and my armies are based the same, I don't have any problem playing any type of rule because in the end, if the basing is the same, you have no problem. But 50 by 50 looks good. That's very important. So let's have a look here. Now you see 40 by 40 bases, the photo on the top right, on the top left, quite good representation of mass infantry attack. And you see in the bottom right, 50 by 50 bases again, larger bases. You require one more miniature, but again, you can give the feeling of a mass attack as well. Let's see now and talk about the miniatures you're going to use and how you can make it be historical accurate, if we can say this word. Now, in the missile troops, there's not much difference. As we said, the same with the longbows. The missile troops were usually with padded gambesoms, heavy cloth, some plate armor they found during the battlefield. We see on the right, it's late 100 Years' War crossbowman, and on the left, it's early 100 Years' War crossbowman. Sometimes they had pavises, sometimes they didn't. Not a big difference. You can mix and match. Probably the helms are the biggest difference, I would say. But generally speaking, you can use any crossbowman to represent the era. Now, if we go to the men-at-arms, now here we have a difference. You can see the top early 100 Years' War, a lot of shields that you didn't have in the late 100 Years' War. Mostly, partial plate armor, a lot of cloth and heraldry. In the bottom, you will see that, of course, there is more plated units and less shields. Again, you have more armored knights, less pads, but again, the lower classes of the men-at-arms could be part of both eras. Now here, late 100 Years' War, you can see the French, you can see how you base it. What I usually do is I put, to be historical accurate, you have the nobles who were in the same base, and you have their retainers, their support in the same base, so you can make it look, a base with all knights. It's not historically accurate. So you have in the front, you see here Orléans and D'Albert, and behind you see who are with full plate armor, and in the back you have the standard bearer, who is a retainer, mostly has a padded gabensom and chain mail. So try to mix and match so you can make it historical accurate in a way that also the bases will look interesting. The same here for the early 100 Years' War, and with Claymore casting this, the previous were Perry miniatures. You see the knight in the center, and around him you have his retainers, his men-at-arms, his soldiers, common soldiers with less quality, not as high quality armor as they had, and not the quality of weapons that he has, but they're in the same base, because that's how it was. The knights were fighting, that they had their men beside them who were not equipped as well. Again, the same thing. How you can portray a unit much better. You have the standard bearer and the commander in the center, who is a high noble knight. Beside him, another noble knight. But on his right, you see, on our right, on his left, you see a foot soldier with basically padded armor and some chainmail, maybe. That's what I would say. Also, in the far right, you see a common soldier, and beside him, a very well-equipped knight. So this is the way you should base your units, the way you should mix and match. You should not put, unless you're portraying a king, who of course will have very high standing nobles beside him. But if you're portraying any type of noble, you should have a bigger variety around him. So guys, this is from me. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got some information you didn't know, and it will help you creating your armies. Thank you so much for watching, and bye-bye.